In Chapter 1, Safiya von Hastral and Iseult attempt a heist that immediately goes wrong. The black carriage they targeted is heavily guarded, with 32 crossbow-wielding guards and an additional 20 approaching. Positioned atop a cliff with the sea below, they realize their buried firepot trap will soon be discovered. Safi, distracted by a cheating gambler named Caden, laments her lost winnings and the potential for a better life for her and Iseult. The sisters quickly disguise themselves as peasants, smearing dirt and adjusting cloaks to obscure their identities. They approach the carriage, bluffing past the guards by claiming to seek a healer for a sick sister. Suddenly, a Aeduan monk, a Bloodwitch, attacks. The sisters engage in a precise and agile fight, dodging crossbow bolts and parrying the monk's strikes. They manage to reach the cliffside, grab ropes affixed to stakes, and leap over the edge, beginning their daring escape into the ocean below. In Chapter 2, Safiya and Iseult cling to the cliffside after leaping from ropes over the ocean, sustaining cuts and bruises from barnacle-covered rocks. Their ropes ignite and disintegrate, forcing them to scramble sideways as crossbow bolts rain down. The girls eventually find shelter beneath a small overhang, the waves lashing at their ankles. Realizing they must swim to the lighthouse to evade the Bloodwitch and the city guards, they strip their skirts to move more efficiently. Once inside the crumbling lighthouse, they wring out wet clothes and assess their injuries from the climb and water exposure. Iseult retrieves their emergency satchel containing rags, lanolin, and weapons, and the sisters clean their blades while planning their next move. Safi worries that the Bloodwitch has sensed her Truthwitch magic and could be tracking them. They conclude that they may need to flee Vanaza City entirely, praying to Nodin, god of the waves, to keep the Bloodwitch and the guards away. In Chapter 3, Safiya and Iseult struggle to reach Matthew's coffee shop in Vanaza City after their escape from the lighthouse. Exhausted, bruised, and hungry, they navigate alleys, rooftops, and crowded streets while avoiding city guards. Upon reaching the coffee shop, Safi uses a lock spell to gain entry, and the girls take refuge inside, grateful that no Bloodwitch is pursuing them at that moment. They climb to the attic, Iseult's home, where they change into clean clothes and discuss their next moves. Safi worries about the Bloodwitch tracking her Truthwitch magic, while Iseult considers potential allies, including the Silk Guildmaster or the Hellbards, but acknowledges complications with both. Preparing to leave the city, they plan to use rooftops and crowds to evade capture. At a guard checkpoint, Safi confidently feigns ignorance, but a gull relieves itself on her shoulder, causing the guards to laugh and allowing the girls to slip past unnoticed toward the southern wharf district. In Chapter 4, Merik Nahar attends a formal luncheon at the Doge's Palace in Vanaza City, representing Nubrevna at the Continental Truce Summit. Frustrated by the trivial gossip and frivolities of the diplomats, Merik observes the wastefulness and incompetence around him, particularly noting the Silk Guildmaster's misuse of Earthwitch magic. When a Kartoran noble insults the Hellbard Brigade and the Empire's elite witches, Merik unleashes a controlled burst of his elemental power, startling the diners and collecting leftover food for his crew. After the luncheon, he departs the palace to the southern wharf district to strategize how to aid Nubrevna, which faces threats from the surrounding empires. Boarding his warship, the Yana, he meets his thread brother, Cullen Ikre, and discusses an urgent message regarding his sister Vivia and a Wheat Guild trade ship tied to the Foxes. Sensing unnatural tides caused by a witch's magic and witnessing a man in imminent magical collapse, Merik prepares to act, summoning his own power to take flight. In Chapter 5, Safi senses a cleaving tide witch summoning destructive water magic at the southern wharf. She and Iseult rush to confront the tide witch, navigating rising waves and chaotic docks. Safi rolls to avoid danger, frees her legs by slashing her skirts, and grabs her parrying dagger. Iseult engages with her moon scythes, attacking the tide witch, while a Nubrevnan air witch appears to assist, using wind magic to counter the waves. Together, they subdue and kill the cleaved tide witch, though the battle leaves the street flooded and the corpse's threads behaving unusually. Amid the chaos, Habim, Safi's mentor, arrives, restraining Iseult and warning her that the Bloodwitch employed by Guildmaster Yotiluzi is in Vanaza City. Habim instructs Iseult to hide for the night at an inn called the Hawthorn Canal, while he and Matthew handle the Bloodwitch. Iseult reluctantly complies, surrendering her weapons and accepting coins to cover her stay and a horse for travel. In Chapter 6, Safi is escorted by Habim in a covered carriage after the cleaving incident at the docks. Habim explains that he and Matthew identified the girls through their weapons and located Matthew's destroyed shop. Safi struggles with guilt over the damage she caused and the danger posed to Iseult. Habim instructs her to stay inside the carriage to avoid being detected by the Bloodwitch, assuring her that Iseult is safe and wearing a cloak of salamander fiber. Safi learns that her actions have complicated long-term plans, and Habim emphasizes that staying with her uncle Aaron is the only way to remain safe. Upon arriving at Guildmaster Alex's mansion, Safi retrieves her and Iseult's belongings, finding them secure. Matthew informs her of the importance of her attendance at the Truce Summit Ball, explaining that the impending end of the truce and the looming Great War require her presence. Safi reluctantly prepares for the evening, resolving to decipher Iseult's hidden message and navigate the dangers ahead. In Chapter 7, Iseult follows Habim's orders and navigates Venaza City alone, avoiding detection by the Bloodwitch. She uses the city's streets, canals, and passing traffic to evade him, taking advantage of chaos and improvising her escape. After a perilous chase, including jumping between prams, ferry decks, and navigating crowded streets, she identifies a route to the Medenzi settlement, a safe location where the Bloodwitch cannot follow. Meanwhile, Merik strategizes aboard his ship, monitoring the Jadonsi Sea and communicating with the voice witch Herman. Herman urges him to exploit trade opportunities and defend Nubrevna through calculated piracy, but Merik resists, seeking a way to feed his people without bloodshed. An envoy from Kartora, von Hastral, arrives to negotiate trade, presenting Merik with a critical chance to establish peace while countering Vivia's aggressive ambitions. Safi, now at Guildmaster Alex's mansion, prepares for the Truce Summit Ball in a silvery gown. She reviews Iseult's Carowin book to understand her Thread sister's plan and resolves to survive the night, manage the Bloodwitch threat, and ultimately reunite with Iseult. In Chapter 8, Iseult escapes Venaza City on her bridal mare, carefully navigating traffic and city obstacles to avoid the Bloodwitch. She treats her bleeding palm with makeshift bandages and relies on her knowledge of Nomatsi markers to follow the safe path toward the Medenzi settlement. Approaching the village, she must hide her outsider identity while remaining cautious of both the Bloodwitch and the tribe's customs. Upon arrival, Iseult is confronted by the tribe's changed dynamics. Her mother, Gretchen, and Alma assist her, while Corlant, a manipulative figure who has gained control over the tribe using his Voidwitch and Cursewitch powers, scrutinizes her. Gretchen explains Corlant's influence and the danger he poses, revealing the Puppeteer, a powerful young Threadwitch capable of controlling severed threads and commanding the cleaved. Iseult receives new black clothing and protective ruby threadstones from Alma and Gretchen. These stones allow her to track and protect Safi. Iseult resolves to comply with the tribe's rules and stay the night, preparing for her eventual reunion with Safi. In Chapter 9, Safi seamlessly assumes her role as a domna at the Grand Ball, navigating the crowd, formalities, and her Uncle Aaron's expectations with surprising ease. She is accompanied by Prince Leopold, whose charm and familiarity ease her transition. Despite her careful composure, Safi enjoys herself, sampling the lavish food and observing the nobility. During the ball, she encounters a familiar Nubrevnan from the pier who introduces Prince Merik of Nubrevna. Safi agrees to dance with him, and their interaction quickly escalates into a display of skill and mutual challenge. She executes the Nubrevnan four-step flawlessly, matching Merik's movements with precision, demonstrating her physical agility and resilience. As they dance, the intensity of their movements awakens Merik's Windwitchery, amplifying the dynamic energy around them, yet Safi maintains control and focus. By the dance's conclusion, both are physically taxed, but the encounter establishes a charged connection and reveals Safi's competence and confidence in high-stakes social and magical environments. In Chapter 10, Iseult undergoes the Medenzi tribe's greeting, enduring scrutiny from nearly 200 tribe members while maintaining her composure as a Threadwitch. Corlant observes her closely, his vibrant threads highlighting his power and control, signaling the danger she faces. Once the greeting concludes, Gretchen and Alma reveal that Corlant has discovered their plan, and they urgently urge Iseult to flee. As she exits, Iseult confronts a mob of 400 tribe members, manipulated by Corlant's magic and convinced she is the feared puppeteer. The crowd's violent intent forces her to adapt quickly. She channels the illusion of the puppeteer through her chanting, temporarily controlling their fear and buying herself space. The confrontation escalates as Corlant and the mob attack, firing arrows and throwing stones. Alma rescues Iseult by galloping her toward the gate, dodging projectiles, including a near-fatal needle arrow shot from Corlant. They narrowly escape into the moonlit meadow, with Iseult realizing her life depends on Gretchen and Alma's coordinated plan against Corlant. In Chapter 11, Aeduan, the Bloodwitch, continues tracking Safiya at the Doge's palace during the diplomatic ball. He is bored but alert, noting that previous attempts to follow her and the Nomatsi girl failed due to their lack of detectable blood scent. Using spy holes, Aeduan observes the ballroom and recognizes the Truthwitch dancing with a prince, detecting her blood scent. He prepares to intercept her but must navigate the palace, including a rope ladder and crowded marble floors, while avoiding Poison Witch bodyguards and a Glamour Witch manipulating illusions. Aeduan identifies the Glamour Witch as Guildmaster Alix, realizing that Safiya's location is obscured by powerful magic. He loses Safiya's scent and must pursue her farther. Despite encountering 20 city guards, crossbows, and other obstacles, Aeduan's blood witchery and combat skill allow him to push through. He activates a threadstone with a blue opal, summoning aid from nearby Carowan monks, ensuring he has additional support for tracking and capturing Safiya. In Chapter 12, Safi flees the Doge's palace under cover of a blackout, guided at breakneck speed by Uncle Aaron and Habim. She witnesses her own magically created double still standing in the ballroom, revealing the use of Glamour Witch magic. They race through narrow paths and reach a worker's gate, where Matthew awaits. Aaron instructs Safi to escape not just the city, but all of Dalmati, explaining that a marriage to Emperor Henrik would have enslaved her and that the kidnapping is a ruse to protect her. Safi struggles with trust but resolves to take control of her own fate, determined to rescue Iseult as well. She rides a grey gelding from a stable, taking a pitchfork and a knife for defense. As she flees, she notices Carowan monks, one a Bloodwitch, pursuing her. Safi diverts from the northbound cart carrying Matthew and Habim, zigzagging along the marshy coastline to avoid capture. Along the way, she passes a voice witch and warns him that the Bloodwitch is hunting her, signaling the danger that continues to close in. In Chapter 13, Iseult and Alma catch up with Gretchen after fleeing the Nomatsi pursuit. Gretchen tends to Iseult's wounds, removing an arrow from her bicep and applying healer salves. She explains that she and Alma had been secretly preparing for escape for years, carefully stashing supplies and planning for a future departure. Their plan had been delayed until Iseult returned, allowing them to act without Corlant noticing. Iseult refuses to accompany them to Saldonica, determined instead to rescue Safi. Gretchen and Alma equip Iseult with a painstone, a cutlass, and the grey mare, Alachi, warning her that she cannot reach Safi otherwise. Iseult sets off, following the mare's guidance along familiar terrain. She soon spots Safi approaching, riding toward her while pursued by 4 Carowan monks. The two Threadwitches reunite mid-gallop, assessing the situation and preparing to make a stand at the nearby lighthouse, with Safi warning that the Bloodwitch remains in pursuit, intensifying the danger. In Chapter 14, Merik navigates the warship Jana with Cullen and 3 Tidewitch officers, using wind and tide magic to move stealthily toward the coast. The crew maintains silence, with only 4 men chanting softly to control the bewitched air. Merik left the Doge's palace early, after the failed Nubrevnan four-step, to carry out a mission for Dom Aaron, transporting Aaron's niece to the western port city of Lena unharmed, fulfilling a trade agreement crucial for Dalmati. When informed by Herman and Ryber that the passenger, Safi, was fleeing north toward a lighthouse and pursued by Carowan monks, Merik shifts focus from stealth to urgency. He commands the ship toward shore, leaving Cullen in charge of the vessel, and prepares to intervene directly. Using his windwitchery, Merik flies toward the lighthouse, approaching Safi and Iseult as they emerge from the side of the tower, ready to defend them against the pursuing monks and secure the passenger for the trade mission. In Chapter 15, Aeduan pursues Safiya and Iseult along the coastal highway after finally securing a piebald mare. Despite barbed arrows embedded in his body, he presses on, closing in on a cart carrying Safiya under a salamander fiber blanket. As they near a lighthouse, Aeduan observes the Truthwitch and Safiya in combat-ready stances, forming a striking visual reminiscent of the Kar Awen. Attempting to use his blood witchery to control Safiya, he is thwarted by a Windwitch who propels both her and Safiya into the air. Aeduan races after them, but the girl's agility and magic prevent him from seizing control. He ultimately reaches Safiya and Iseult as they land, confronting them directly. In the struggle, Safiya's Painstone activates and she stabs Aeduan in the heart with his own stiletto. Though grievously wounded and partially incapacitated, Aeduan survives, sinking beneath the sea foam, while the girls remain free and continue their escape. In Chapter 16, Safi struggles to regain control after her flight from the lighthouse and her sister Iseult's injury. She flies after Prince Merik, who has taken her aboard his ship and discovers Iseult faint and badly wounded. A water witch healer, Monk of Rain, tends to Iseult while Safi observes cautiously, uncertain whether she can fully trust the monk or Merik. Merik restrains Safi briefly to ensure cooperation, emphasizing the importance of her safety and compliance, while explaining that he and his crew act under strict orders. Safi notes the ship's layout, studies the swords available, and evaluates Merik's demeanor, realizing both he and she are pawns in larger schemes. Merik instructs her to clean up and assures her Iseult will receive proper care. Safi then inspects a Windwitch contract detailing her safe transport to Lena in the 100 Isles, which formalizes her delivery and the conditions of the trade agreement between Merik and Aaron, ensuring she cannot be harmed during the journey. In Chapter 17, Prince Merik struggles with his anger and the need to protect his crew while transporting Safiya von Hastral to Lena. He observes her behavior and notes the danger posed by Aeduan, a Bloodwitch, who is still hunting the girls. Merik resolves to prioritize the safety of his men over intervening directly with the Bloodwitch, planning to reach Lena as quickly as possible while calling on his Tidewitches for assistance. Meanwhile, Iseult remains unconscious and severely wounded from an arrow. A water witch healer, who had rescued Iseult 6.5 years earlier, attends to her, stabilizing her condition and easing her into a healing sleep. Iseult recalls being lost as a child, and the monk confirms her identity, recognizing her from the past. The healer reassures Iseult that Safi is nearby and will return soon, allowing Iseult to rest and recover from her injuries while the ship continues toward Lena. In Chapter 18, Aeduan the Bloodwitch awakens on a northern shore after recent events, shaken but mostly unharmed. He assesses his injuries and realizes that the Nomatsi girl spared his life, creating a life debt he must honor. Determined to continue his pursuit, he navigates through the Dalmoti Empire, eventually reaching Guildmaster Yotiluzi's home to prepare for the next stage of his mission. After gathering necessary items, a stiletto and a list of names, he leaves the mansion and proceeds to the Doge's palace, observing the destruction caused by the recent fire. Inside, Aeduan encounters Emperor Henrik of Kartora, Prince Leopold the Doge, and Dom Aaron von Hastral. He informs them that the Nubrevnans have abducted the Domna, omitting Safiya's identity as a Truthwitch. Negotiations follow. Aeduan demands 5,000 piastres upfront for his services. Prince Leopold agrees to accompany him to ensure payment, and with the Emperor's approval, Aeduan begins the hunt for Safiya, now aided but also constrained by the prince. In Chapter 19, Safi struggles with anxiety over Iseult's condition, while confined below decks by Merik for safety. Evrain tends to Iseult's wounds, but Safi grows restless and leaves to explore the ship's hold. She surveys the layout, noting crowded spaces, cramped sailors, and the smell of livestock. Safi interrogates a young crew member about the safety of Nomatsis aboard and learns the crew would not turn on them as long as Merik approved. Guided by the girl, Ryber Forza, Safi climbs topside to observe the crew drills and the hierarchy of sailors. She notes the first mate, Cullen, and the organization of the ship, identifying which men are competent fighters and which are weak. Ryber also teaches Safi about the sea foxes, mythic creatures used to frighten sailors and enforce compliance. Safi assesses the ship, planning how to protect Iseult and possibly take control if necessary, while noting tensions between Merik's authority and the crew. In Chapter 20, Merik descends below decks to check on Safiya and Iseult, concerned about the Domna's safety while Evrain tends Iseult's illness. Evrain urges Merik to stop and seek a port to save Iseult, but he insists on maintaining control and adhering to the Hastral contract. Realizing Safiya has disobeyed orders and gone topside, Merik confronts her on the quarterdeck. Safiya demands that the ship go ashore to get a firewitch healer for Iseult, threatening to ruin the contract if her demand is ignored. Merik's Windwitch magic surges uncontrollably, amplifying his anger, and he and Safiya engage in a chaotic airborne duel atop the deck. They tumble, flip, and crash, testing both Safiya's skill and Merik's control of his powers. Despite her strength and defiance, Merik eventually gains the upper hand, restraining Safiya with his loyal crew, but she continues to resist verbally, signaling her determination and marking Merik as an opponent. In Chapter 21, Aeduan secures Emperor Henrik's approval to hire him for the mission to recover Safiya von Hastral, though he spends significant time extracting Prince Leopold and 8 Hellbard escorts from the palace. After navigating Vanaza City's crowded streets, filled with onlookers and rumors blaming the Marstocks for the palace fire, Aeduan arrives at the southern wharf district, fatigued and bloodied from his exertion. He assesses the fleet and warns Leopold that sending an entire navy to Nubrevna is futile because Safiya will likely be in Lovitz before the fleet can reach her, and foreign vessels cannot legally land due to the 20-year truce. Aeduan devises a strategy. Use a single fast frigate supported by all available tide and windwitches to intercept the Nubrevnans, allowing them to recover the Domna without violating the truce. Leopold agrees, granting Aeduan authority over the officers and Hellbards, and Aeduan prepares to update his father while proceeding to 14 Redenza Street. In Chapter 22, Safiya is chained below decks, unable to aid the critically ill Iseult. Evrain, a water witch healer, examines Iseult and explains that her muscle inflammation is bewitched, likely caused by a curse witch, and requires the intervention of both a fire witch and earth witch healer. Evrain can stabilize the curse temporarily but cannot fully treat it, and amputation may become necessary if the curse spreads further. Evrain also recounts her own history, including her Karawan vows and connection to the Nihar family, revealing she was the monk who originally found Iseult, making her involvement significant. Safiya resolves to find a way to get Iseult proper care despite her restraints. Meanwhile, Merik monitors the Aetherwitch miniature of the trade ship he misled Vivia about, confirming that it is arriving exactly as he predicted. He coordinates with Cullen to ensure the crew and tide witches are ready to act, prioritizing the ship and crew while still planning for Safiya's safety. In Chapter 23, Safiya remains chained below decks while Iseult struggles with her cursed muscle injury. Evrain, the monk and water witch healer, leaves temporarily, leaving Safi to contemplate Iseult's condition and their improbable reunion with Evrain, who had previously found Iseult. Merik returns with a meager meal, acknowledging Safi's earlier attack and asserting that he understands her actions. He warns Safi that the ship will soon face potential danger, but assures her she will remain safe. Through their conversation, Safi recounts her past with Iseult, explaining how Iseult saved her life as a child, establishing their bond. Merik shares the story of his friendship with Cullen, paralleling Safi and Iseult's connection. Evrain returns to feed Iseult and stabilizes her condition, emphasizing the need for a fire witch healer. Safi vows to secure one, and Iseult, reassured, accepts her care while falling back into a magically induced sleep, resting beneath Evrain's protective magic. In Chapter 24, Merik prepares the Janna to intercept Vivia, commanding the tide witches and crew to generate wind and propel the ship. The crew sings sea shanties, Ryber pounds the wind drum, and Cullen launches ahead to scout. Safi observes from below decks, noting Vivia's piracy and the Marstoki warship approaching. She identifies a fire witch healer among the captured Marstocks and formulates a plan to get Iseult to the healer with Evrain's help. Evrain unlocks Safi's chains, allowing her to act. Meanwhile, Merik reaches Vivia's ship, confronting her as she has the Marstocks under control and refuses to return them, claiming it doesn't violate the truce. Merik realizes the scale of Vivia's actions. She has seized weapons, sailors, and fire witches preparing to sail to the sentries of Nodin. Marstoki warships begin firing on the Janna, but Cullen uses his witchery to intercept cannon fire. Merik prepares to surrender Safi to the Marstocks to protect his crew. In Chapter 25, Iseult regains consciousness to find her arm in pain while being treated by a bound Marstoki fire witch healer aboard Vivia's ship. Safi restrains the healer, urging him to work faster as a Marstoki naval fleet approaches, seeking Safi, the Emperor's betrothed. Iseult's wound is healed, though she remains weak. As the ship navigates the chaos, 2 monstrous sea foxes attack, snapping at Marstoki sailors. Safi and Iseult work together to fend off the creatures, stabbing one in the eye and throat and the other with Iseult's cleaver, finally subduing them. Meanwhile, the Marstoki fleet closes in. Merik uses his wind magic and Cullen's assistance to lift Safi, Iseult, Evrain, and himself to the Janna. To distract the remaining sea foxes and protect the ship, Merik launches 4 flaming barrels overboard. The foxes pursue the barrels, allowing the warship to sail safely east as the group prepares for the next confrontation. In Chapter 26, Iseult struggles with lingering pain from her wound as the Jana sails toward Nubrevna, lifted by Merik and Cullen's magic to escape the Marstocks. She observes Evrain, noting how time and war have hardened her, yet she remains a skilled fighter and healer. The coastline reveals devastation from the Great War. Poisoned soils by Kartoran Earth Witches, Dalmati Water Witch attacks, and Marstoki Fire Witch destruction, leaving Nubrevna's forests and farmlands decimated and its people starving. Safi is overwhelmed with guilt and regret over her role in their dangerous situation. Suddenly, Cullen collapses from exhaustion and lung issues. Merik and Evrain rush to stabilize him, using magic breaths to revive him, while Merik reprimands Safi for her recklessness. Though Safi fears punishment, she accepts it to protect her friends. Iseult urges her to rest and leave the rain, acknowledging Safi's responsibility and strength, trusting that they will recover and make things right. In Chapter 27, Aeduan endures seasickness aboard the Kartoran cutter, while the vessel encounters 4 destroyed naval ships, 3 Marstoki and 1 Nubrevnan. Despite Safiya von Hastral not being aboard, Prince Leopold insists on investigating, taking Aeduan via Windwitch to the Empress of Marstock's galleon. 10 adders, skilled poison witches, escort them, their presence a clear threat. Inside the Empress Vanessa's cabin, she maintains a composed and authoritative demeanor, showing no concern over Aeduan's powers or Leopold's lack of escort. Leopold attempts to provoke Vanessa with trivialities, but she remains patient, revealing only that her fleet was damaged by sea foxes and requesting Tidewitch assistance, despite concealing the presence of 3 Tidewitches aboard. Tensions rise as Leopold pressures Vanessa regarding Safiya, warning her of consequences if she refuses to cooperate. Vanessa tests Leopold's resolve, but he remains firm. Aeduan notes her deception and maintains alertness, escorting Leopold safely back to the cutter while Vanessa and her adders make no attempt to stop them. In Chapter 28, Merik struggles to navigate the Jana through rain and darkness, racing to reach a hidden cove behind the lonely Bastard Peak before the tide makes it inaccessible. Safiya remains chained and exhausted, while Evrain and Iseult are also under strain, though Iseult stays below decks, resting. Merik's focus is on discipline and timing, ensuring the Hastral agreement remains intact while maintaining the respect of his crew. Herman reports difficulty connecting with the voice witches and Lovets, further complicating their situation. Once the Jana nears the cove, Merik frees Safiya from her leg irons, carrying her to safety beside Iseult, who is asleep. Safiya and Iseult discuss her bruises and the status of her arm, noting the painstone is now inert. Evrain examines both girls, confirming their condition. Safiya observes the cliffs and cove outside, learning it belongs to the Nihar family, a secret landing spot. From there, they plan to continue to Lena on foot. In Chapter 29, Merik visits Cullen in his cabin, finding him weak from illness but managing to converse about plans for their journey. Merik intends to travel north to the estate to find Joris, anticipating potential trouble over Iseult and Safiya, while Cullen offers his support and protective witchery. They discuss family and crew matters, confirming Ryber will assist Cullen during his recovery. After their talk, Merik takes command and refers to Safiya and Iseult as prisoners, maintaining control and distance from Safiya. Meanwhile, Iseult follows Safiya, Evrain, and Ryber through the hold to the quarterdeck, noting the hostility of sailors' threads toward them. At the gray pebbled beach, they observe the devastating effects of poisoned water on local fish and birds. Merik directs Safiya not to drink the water. The party proceeds toward a cave hidden behind cliffs, where Merik and Safiya push a large stone door aside, tumbling into a clearing of dead trees and pale soil, colliding in the process observed by Evrain and Iseult. In Chapter 30, Merik, Safiya, Iseult, and Evrain arrive at Joris's territory, encountering the huntsman and his soldiers. Tensions rise as Joris initially challenges them, but Merik asserts his authority as Prince of Nubrevna, and Evrain displays her status, forcing Joris to acknowledge their respect. With the soldiers' bows lowered, Joris escorts the group, explaining that the path leads to a hidden settlement. The party hikes through a dead forest and barren hillsides, Safiya remaining close to Iseult, while Evrain and Merik ensure the group's safety. Merik struggles with the physical exertion, but continues onward. Eventually, Evrain points out the distant Black Peak, the water well of the Witchlands, the origin well of Nubrevna, once the nation's pride and source of powerful water witches, now long dead. They approach the settlement, where the forest has regenerated and the river flows clean. Merik observes families settling near the river, realizing the land has been restored, giving him hope for future growth and stability. In Chapter 31, Merik, Safi, Iseult, Evrain, and Joris arrive at Nodin's Gift, a thriving village with smiling, devoted Nubrevnans, demonstrating Merik's deep connection to his people. Safi observes the community's resilience and the growing settlement, noting the soldiers and ongoing construction, recognizing the area's strategic value for future conflict. Inside the galleon converted into a cabin, Safi urges Merik to expedite their journey to Lena, despite logistical limits with horses. While reviewing the travel maps and the contract, Safi attempts to apologize for her earlier actions endangering Merik's crew. Merik acknowledges her apology, emphasizing the calculated nature of her previous actions, but softening toward her. Afterwards, Evrain and Iseult prepare to heal Iseult at the origin well of Nubrevna. Safi chooses to accompany them. At the water well, they navigate steep paths and overgrown terrain. Immersed in the well, Iseult feels her body and lungs rejuvenate, her injuries easing, while threads and magic signal the well's potent restorative properties, leaving the group revitalized and ready for the next stage of their journey. In Chapter 32, Aeduan learns that Safiya has gone ashore while their ship drifts east. He immediately acts to pursue her, sensing her blood with his magic. Aeduan insists on Windwitches to transport him and his belongings to the cliffs to track Safiya. Prince Leopold insists on accompanying him, claiming Safiya is his uncle's betrothed. Leopold's slow preparations cost Aeduan precious time, but they eventually depart, flying toward the Nubrevnan cliffs. During the inland trek, Aeduan navigates the forest stealthily, evading soldiers and marking his path while carrying the iron box of silver tailors. When he attempts to regroup with Leopold, the prince has disappeared, leaving only a faint, lingering scent. Aeduan realizes that Leopold has been taken. Soon, Aeduan detects a second blood scent, one he recognizes from Vanaza City, indicating that someone has followed them to Nubrevna and kidnapped Prince Leopold, escalating the urgency of his mission to rescue both Safiya and the prince. In Chapter 33, Merik leads Safiya, Iseult, and Evrain east of Nodin's Gift along a barren, lifeless path. Joris provides the group with the best horses, provisions, and an alert stone for protection, allowing them to travel safely. As they ride, Merik contends with the physical strain of carrying Safiya on the saddle, though he is distracted by thoughts of her and the rising heat of his unspent magic. Conversation turns to practical matters, population, languages, and the limits of Safiya's truthwitchery, but their discussion also deepens their trust in one another. Safiya admits her power has limits and that she struggles to discern truths when people genuinely believe their own words. Merik reflects on his responsibilities as prince, acknowledging the weight he carries, and Safiya challenges him on his need to feel essential. Despite the tension and attraction between them, Merik restrains himself, focusing on the journey and praying to Nodin that the day ends before his magic or emotions overwhelm him. In Chapter 34, Aeduan learns that Safiya has gone ashore, and he must act quickly to catch her. At Leopold's cabin, Aeduan urges the prince to prepare, but Leopold delays, forcing Aeduan to wait as he packs and gives instructions to the Windwitches. Once they depart, Aeduan uses the time to hide his iron lockbox containing silver tailors. Tracking Safiya proves difficult due to the complex terrain and multiple scents, but he eventually reaches the water well of the Witchlands, confirming the Truthwitch has passed through. At the well, Aeduan confronts Prince Leopold, discovering that Leopold is part of the scheme to kidnap Safiya. Using his bloodwitchery, Aeduan forces Leopold to reveal that no one commands him directly, but learns that Leopold has deliberately delayed Aeduan to impede him. Recognizing that Safiya is nearly out of reach, Aeduan restrains Leopold without killing him, deciding to pursue Safiya immediately and investigate the prince's accomplices later. In Chapter 35, Merik wakes from sleep to find Safi beside him. After a brief, tense exchange of teasing and awareness of their intense magical connection, they step away from the bedroll and walk to the sea. Safi follows him despite his protests. They pause on a limestone outcropping to observe the ocean and the distant storm. Their moment of closeness is interrupted by the sound of the wind drum from the Yana, signaling that Merik's ship is approaching and Cullen is alerting him. Realizing the Bloodwitch is pursuing them and that the Marstocks are racing to Lena ahead, Merik devises a plan. He will fly to the Jana to confront the Marstocks, while Safi, Iseult, and Evrain ride east by land to reach Lena first. Evrain prepares the alert stone and equips Safi and Iseult with weapons. Safi takes command, leading the group, and they ride at full speed toward Lena, determined to arrive before the Marstocks. In Chapter 36, Merik lands on the Janna's main deck, finding Cullen exhausted at the tiller. Cullen insists on maintaining speed to catch the Marstocks despite Merik and Ryber urging caution. A storm is approaching, and Merik prepares the ship while hoping for his crew's survival. Meanwhile, Safiya and Iseult ride hard toward Lena, dodging the Marstoki pursuit. They use their alert stone to signal Merik, and Iseult devises a plan to distract enemies and reach the docks safely, ensuring both girls can proceed to Lena. Simultaneously, Aeduan tracks Evrain along a narrow cliffside path. They engage in a deadly knife fight, testing their skills and endurance. Evrain emphasizes the girls' connection to the Origin Well and their role as Kar Awen. Aeduan restrains himself from killing her, recognizing her importance and his duty to the girls. The fight ends with Aeduan wounded in the lung by a returning throwing knife but alive, acknowledging Evrain's unchanging ruthlessness. In Chapter 37, Iseult executes her risky plan to delay the Marstoki soldiers pursuing her and Safiya in Lena. She uses the terrain, alleys, and ruined streets to evade capture, exploiting obstacles, rain-slicked cobblestones, and buildings to gain temporary safety. Despite missteps and close encounters, she navigates through narrow streets, dodging fire witches, poison witches, and other enemy forces, reaching a central courtyard with an ancient fountain depicting Nodin. The soldiers close in, but halt when a female commander identifies that Iseult is not the correct Domna, ordering the troops back to the shore. Attempting to engage a few soldiers to buy Safiya time, Iseult prepares her cutlass, but a sudden surge of violent threads breaks her control. The soldiers around her begin cleaving, their bodies and threads violently snapping in response. The chapter ends with Iseult surrounded by the dangerous, dismembering magic of her enemies, leaving her in immediate peril. In Chapter 38, Safiya moves carefully through Lena to reach Pier 7 while the storm intensifies. She avoids detection by the Marstoki, keeping her sword ready, but is confronted by a Marstoki adder who threatens her with a spiked flail. Recognizing the danger, she dodges, disables the flail, and discovers the adder is an iron witch. Safiya abandons her sword and leaps past the enemy, barely evading the attack, propelled by the violent storm. Meanwhile, Aeduan tracks Safiya and the Marstocks through Lena, observing Iseult's decoy tactics in the courtyard. Aeduan engages several cleaved enemies, noting their poisonous, corrosive blood, and fights to protect the Threadwitch while navigating the chaotic streets and collapsing structures. Simultaneously, Merik arrives at Lena, witnessing Cullen's uncontrolled storm, which threatens everything around him. Merik reaches Cullen, who, in a corrupted state, pleads to be killed. Merik refuses, and Cullen, giving a final broken smile, launches himself off the pier, leaving Merik engulfed in the destructive cyclone. In Chapter 39, Iseult hides in a cupboard, sensing the presence of Cleaved and realizing the puppeteer has cleaved soldiers from afar to obstruct her. Overcome with guilt for her perceived weakness, she detects Evrain's threads and bursts from hiding to save the monk, navigating the storm and the chaos of collapsing buildings. Meanwhile, Safiya faces the Empress of Marstock, Vanessa, on the flooded streets. Despite her injuries and exhaustion, Safi confronts Vanessa using her wits and magic to survive, eventually reaching the third pier. Vanessa attempts to coerce Safi into serving her, but Safi negotiates a deal to ensure Nubrevna's trade with Lovitz, offering her magical assistance in exchange. With her agreement secured, Safi prepares to depart with Vanessa's fleet, confident in her abilities. The chapter resolves Safi's confrontation, establishes her pact with Vanessa, and shows Iseult's ongoing struggle to protect Evrain amid the puppeteer's manipulations and the storm. In Chapter 40, Aeduan rescues Evrain from the Cleaved, carrying her across leagues to the Origin Well. He uses his witchery to stabilize her bleeding and submerge her in the well's healing waters. Over time, Evrain's wounds begin to mend, confirming the well is alive again. Aeduan reflects on the significance of the Truthwitch and Iseult as halves of the Kar Awen, recognizing his conflicted loyalty between his life debt and personal plans. With Evrain safe, he prepares to reunite with his father, the Raider King. Meanwhile, Iseult frees Merik from the rubble caused by Cullen's storm. She tends to his broken ribs and injuries while confirming Safi's safety via her threadstone. Using a bewitched wind drumming signal, Iseult plans to reach Safi and coordinate their next moves. Safi, aboard Vanessa's galleon, recovers from her injuries. She negotiates with the Empress, ensuring trade between Nubrevna and Marstock. Despite being a prisoner, Safi embraces her power, understanding her influence and control over events, and prepares for the future.